Reading 7 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3. Quaramide, Uccle, November 3, 1945. A Note on Relaxation. It is a long time since we spoke about relaxing. On several occasions in the past, we were told that we had to relax and to practice relaxation every day. Of course, this has become a familiar word, having no meaning nowadays in ordinary parlance. But when the work speaks about relaxing, it is speaking about something quite different that we should all practice. Let me remind you what the work says about relaxing. It says that all relaxation must begin with the small muscles, such as the small muscles of the face, the fingers and the toes. We were taught to begin with the face and to put internal attention into the small muscles of the face and to relax them, the muscles round the mouth, the muscles round the eyes, and even the eye muscles themselves. Now, if we speak about relaxing, we have to speak about internal attention. We have two kinds of attention, one external and one internal. For example, when one observes oneself, one's moods, thoughts, and so on, one is using internal attention. Attention not directed towards any external object, visible, tangible, or audible, through the senses. Self-observation is not about anything the senses can see, hear, etc., but about what only the internal sense can observe. This is internal attention, in regard to placing consciousness through attention into different parts of your body. You must begin this gradually. For instance, can you become conscious through internal attention in a particular part of your body? Let us say your left foot, and then switch it over to your right foot, and so on. It is quite useless to try to relax unless you have some idea of what internal attention directed towards a particular part of the body means. As I said, the work teaches that relaxation begins with relaxing the small muscles of the face. It would be no good trying to relax if your eyes were screwed up and your mouth pursed and your jaws clenched. For this reason, it is necessary to become internally conscious of the state of the muscles in your face to begin with. And this act of internal attention will produce in you the right condition for relaxing the whole body. The point, however, is that you have to do it. As you know, most people have no time to do anything like that. They are always carried on in the life stream of useless thoughts, anxieties, and worries. And people even think that to interrupt this purely mechanical stream of things that occupy them the whole time is something that they should not do, that is quite wrong, and so on. But this is not the case. If you can interrupt this mechanical stream that governs you, the stream of life, this cinema film that is always running through you, even for a moment, you will begin to get force. So try to begin with putting your internal attention into the muscles of your face and notice how much attention is lying there. Mr. O once said that modern life is always producing tensions in our muscles, anxious expressions, hurried movements, and all this wastes an enormous amount of energy. But for heaven's sake, do not try to relax the small muscles of your face when you are crossing Piccadilly Circus. This would be a great mistake. In fact, it might be called making right effort at the wrong time. And if you make right effort at the wrong time, or wrong effort at the right time, you will get into difficulties. There is a time for everything. That is a right time at which to do things. For this reason, I wish tonight to have the following passage from Ecclesiastes read about the right time to do things. For if you make an effort at the wrong time, even although the effort may be right, it will have no result. Quote, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to rend, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace." Ecclesiastes 3, 1-8. Imagine standing still amid the traffic and trying to relax the small muscles of your face, and then, if you are run over, complaining that you were told to do it. This is merely foolishness, comparable with the foolishness of people in the early work who were told to go against mechanicalness and thought it would be a good thing to eat coal, or to stand upright in empty buses, or to eat with a knife in the left hand and the fork in the right hand. All these efforts are useless because they are not intelligent. This work is about intelligent effort. We asked a question the other day at one of the meetings here. Have you studied your being yet at all? And have you noticed what in your being you should change in the light of the work? Supposing you have never observed your being at all and keep on trying to do this work just as you are told, will it do you any good? Will it connect itself with yourself? Supposing, for example, you never notice your negative emotions, your envy, your jealousy, and so on, and yet you always try to work on the emotional center in a theoretical way. Will it do you any good? Now, we have to speak tonight about posture, about muscles, in short, about moving center. I suppose you know that each center hypnotizes the other centers. Supposing a man in his moving center invariably adopts a depressed, muscular posture, and the small muscles of the face express gloom of some kind, do you think that such a man will be able to have pleasant emotions or interesting thoughts? Certainly not. He is chained by his muscular posture. You all know that depressed states make us look depressed in posture. If one is intelligent enough in the work, one will alter one's posture if one is trying to separate from the negative emotion that has got hold of one, because each negative emotion will produce its own muscular posture. A man comes into the room, bent, drooping, gloomy-faced, and you know at once that he is in a negative state, which may be habitual, unless he alters his muscular posture. In the same way, to return to the question of the small muscles of the face alone, if a person always has a drooped mouth, a weary or troubled or anxious look, you know quite well that this person is in a bad state, and that unless you can make this person smile or stand more upright, he may remain hypnotized by his posture. Understand, please, that posture is not merely a question of the big muscles of the body, but of the small muscles as well. I mean that it is no good standing upright with a gloomy face, because the face, that is, the 101 small muscles that control the expression of the face, is most directly governed by the emotional center. for the face reflects the emotions more than anything else does. You would not like a man speaking between his teeth to tell you that he loves you. One would know at once that he was lying and merely using words without any real meaning, which unfortunately is our condition most of the time. Now, since the moving center can hypnotize the emotional and intellectual centers, it is a good thing to notice your posture and your facial expression, your face posture, at times, and to study through internal attention how to alter these postures. The reason is that if you relax the muscles, especially the small muscles, you will get into a different state of emotion and of thought. Have you ever noticed that they begin to assume certain postures, certain facial expressions? Now, supposing that just at that moment, either this man or this woman observes himself or herself and starts by relaxing the muscles, both large and small, would it be possible for the state of rage to continue and grow? Certainly not. Unfortunately, we never work on ourselves just at the moment when we should, because we much prefer to fall into typical mechanical reactions to the ordinary affairs of life, rather than to take them more consciously with some degree of self-remembering. In fact, a man flying into a rage, if he could observe the tensions in his muscles, would really be a man who could remember himself at the critical moment, and this would entirely change his behavior. Try, therefore, to study relaxation when you can. Notice how your face muscles are contracted, and try by putting your internal attention into the face muscles to relax them. I advise you to begin with the muscles round about your eyes, and then the muscles round about your nose, those muscles which sneer so easily, and then the small muscles all around your mouth and your cheeks, and then put your internal attention into those muscles which are just under the chin and in the front of the neck, and then go round the back of your head and relax those muscles that make you stiff-necked. And then into the bigger muscles round your shoulders, and gradually descend through internal attention right down to your toes. Of course, this takes a long time, but it is a very good thing to try to do. I have left out the muscles of the hands. I should have said, pass from the shoulders down the arms to the hands, and begin with the wrist muscles. Put your internal attention into your wrist muscles, so that your wrists are quite flexible, quite dropped down, and then try to go into the small muscles of the fingers and relax them. Everyone, in going through the muscular tensions in their bodies in this way, will get to know for themselves certain groups of muscles which are not ordinarily relaxed properly. Remember, above all, that you cannot relax just by saying to yourself, relax. It is an actual exercise of internal attention. It is a directed effort that has to be made comparatively consciously, and even if you do it only once a week, you will get results. Often people are kept awake at night because of a certain group of muscles being in a tense state. They may observe their emotional center and their intellectual center and try to relax, not identify with these two centers, but they do not observe through internal attention the muscular contractions that exist in their body. Now, this paper is about muscular relaxation. It is about relaxing the moving center. I will remind you again that the work says that every center can hypnotize another center. In the case of moving center, this means that certain typical postures and typical expressions induce in you typical emotions and typical thoughts. For example, a hurried person who cannot stop rushing about is a person who has a moving center that assumes certain positions or postures, or rather, in this case, certain movements which belong to the same idea, and therefore is always hypnotized by moving center, assuming these postures and movements. These hurried movements would induce hurried and anxious emotions and hurried and anxious thoughts. This is where illness sometimes is so good. I can only say that I have noticed it in myself very often. Illness quietens moving center, and so often does a great deal of good by relaxing us. Perhaps some of you have noticed the same thing. I may not be emotionally anxious or have any reason to be, but if I am accustomed to make hurried movements and apparently never have time for anything, my moving center will hypnotize my emotional center into feeling anxiety and being harassed. Of course, we must not think for a moment that we are all going to begin to walk about majestically and slowly just to show off how we are relaxed. One has to be really relaxed through internal attention when one wishes to be, and one feels one needs to be relaxed. If you will start with the small muscles of your face and do this exercise quite sincerely, you will be very surprised to find out how very often rather difficult and worrying thoughts completely cease. For example, stop frowning for a short time. I mean, don't just stop frowning because you are told not to frown, but through internal attention, really go into the muscles that are frowning, and lo and behold, all your frowning thoughts will disappear. This means that they are kept going by the posture of your face. Again, people who stick out their jaws and clench their fists find that it is quite remarkable if they can cease to do this. They feel quite alien from themselves. But since we all wish to remain mechanical and do not wish to change at all, I fancy that these people will very soon stick out their jaws and clench their fists and make chests as before. Now, in discussing this paper, please remember that we start in the work with relaxing the muscles of the face, and this takes a lot of practice in putting the consciousness into these muscles and relaxing them one by one. And remember especially the small skin muscles just underneath the chin and the muscles at the back of the neck. In my personal experience, I have found that relaxing the wrist muscles when I have no time to do anything else is extremely useful. Let your hands drop, because the hands so easily express violence.